They found her sitting at the piano, fingers hovering just above the ivory keys, eyes locked on something no one else could see. The sheet music was blank, but she kept whispering the same 4 words. He's not in there. It wasn't the first time Grace Whitaker had disappeared from her own life, but this time, when she came back, she brought something with her. Something that didn't belong. And now, the house feels wrong. The first time Grace vanished, it was summer. The kind of muggy Georgia heat that made the wooden porch steps sweat, and the cicadas scream until midnight. She was 11, playing in the backyard with her brother, Milo, when she simply stopped talking. No injury, no trauma anyone could see, she just froze. For 7 days she didn't speak a word. Not to her parents, not to doctors, not to Milo, who sat outside her bedroom every night with a flashlight and a stack of comic books, reading aloud until he fell asleep on the floor. Then, just as suddenly, she came back. That was 24 years ago. Now, Grace is 35. A high school music teacher with a fragile smile and a steel trap schedule. Monday scales, Tuesday theory, Wednesday choir, rinse and repeat. She lives alone in her childhood home. Her parents passed within months of each other 2 years ago, and Milo moved up to Boston, where he teaches criminal psychology. They talk, but not about that week. Never about that week. The silence has rules. But on a gray November morning, Grace wakes up to find muddy footprints leading from her front door to the piano bench. She hadn't had anyone over, and her feet are clean. She stares at the smudges, tracing them with her eyes. The dirt isn't red like the clay from her yard. It's black. Wet. Wrong. She scrubs them away, but the scent clings to her skin, swampy, metallic, like old pennies buried in a bog. That night, she dreams of her mother's voice, faint and crackling like a broken radio, whispering through the air vents. He's still in there. When she wakes, the piano lid is open. She's certain she closed it. She begins to doubt herself. Maybe it's stress. Maybe it's the holidays coming up. Maybe it's just the house, old wood creaking and groaning like it remembers things she doesn't. At school, she starts missing beats during warm-ups. She loses count in a 3 to 4 measure, something she hasn't done since she was 17. Her students stare, confused. She forces a smile. At home, it gets worse. The footprints come back. Every night. And every time, they stop at the same place, in front of the piano, where someone or something sits in silence. On the 3rd night, she hears it. A single note. Low. Sustained. The kind of sound that doesn't just echo in the ears, but behind the ribs. When she checks the strings inside the piano, she finds something stuck between them. A tooth. Human. Yellow. Cracked. She calls Milo. He answers on the 2nd ring, his voice groggy but alert. Grace. I think it's happening again, she whispers. But this time. I think I brought something back. He doesn't respond for a long time. Finally, he says, I'll be there tomorrow. Then the line goes dead. And the note plays again, louder this time. The house hums with it. Like it's remembering too. Milo arrived just after dawn, still in his airport clothes. Eyes ringed with the sleepless panic of someone who'd been bracing for a call like this his whole life. Grace opened the door before he knocked. Neither of them hugged. Show me, he said. She led him to the piano. The room smelled faintly of mildew and iron, as if something had seeped through the floorboards during the night. The footprints were gone, she'd cleaned them again out of reflex. But the lid of the piano was open, and the air around it felt unnaturally cold. I didn't touch it after the call, she said. Milo knelt beside the piano, examining the interior. The tooth was still there, wedged deep between 2 bass strings like it had been jammed in with purpose. He didn't say anything, just used a tissue to remove it and slipped it into a small plastic evidence bag he'd pulled from his jacket pocket. You still carry those around? She asked, a trace of their old sibling sarcasm breaking through. Only when I'm visiting family, he replied. He looked at her more closely then, not as her brother, but like a profiler might study a suspect. Not for guilt, but for tells. Her eyes were clear, but distant. Her hands fidgeted constantly, not ringing, but counting something with her fingers. He remembered that gesture from their childhood. She'd count in groups of 4 when she got scared. Grace, he said, gently, have you been losing time? She didn't answer. Instead, she walked to the hallway and pointed to the door beneath the staircase. Our old crawl space? He nodded. There's something in there. I don't remember putting it there. But I found my mother's sweater last week, the yellow one she was buried in. Milo's jaw clenched. What? It still smelled like her perfume. Milo approached the door slowly. The crawl space had always creeped him out, more than the attic, more than the basement. It was narrow, low-ceilinged, and filled with shadows that moved too easily when flashlights flickered. Grace handed him the key. When he unlocked it, the door creaked open with a sigh, and a wave of cold, damp air rolled out. Inside, he found a pile of objects: a tarnished locket, a broken wristwatch, a child's shoe, none of which he recognized. Then, in the corner, a bundle wrapped in piano sheet music. He unwrapped it. More teeth. 7 of them. Each one different. Each one unmistakably human. He turned back to her. Grace, these aren't things you bring back. These are offerings. She didn't flinch. Instead, she said, Milo, when I was gone, I wasn't alone. He stepped closer. Where were you? She blinked, hard. Her lips trembled. I don't know the word for it, but I can hear it sometimes. In the music. The lights flickered. And from the living room, the piano played 2 notes. Then 3. A melody beginning. Grace whispered, It's waking up. And this time, she didn't mean herself. The sound of the piano filled the house again that night. But this time, it wasn't just notes. It was phrases. Broken, echoing chords that rose and fell like a voice trying to remember how to speak. Grace stood at the edge of the living room, arms wrapped tightly around her waist, while Milo crouched by the piano, recording the sounds on his phone. The keys pressed down without touch. Some invisible thing was playing hesitantly, like it was learning. Or relearning. It's in the left hand, Milo said quietly. All the movement. Bass clef. That's emotional memory. Muscle memory. Grace barely nodded. Her eyes never left the keys. He stood up. This isn't just a haunting. This feels rehearsed. She finally turned to him, her face pale. What if it's mine? Milo looked at her. You think you're playing it? Not me now. Me then. When I was gone. Her voice cracked. I think I was practicing something. Something I didn't know how to play before. She walked to the piano, trembling, and gently placed her fingers on the keys. The melody stopped immediately. Silence. Then a single note pressed down under her touch, not when she meant to play. Her hand recoiled. I think it's still in there, she whispered, waiting for me to finish. That night, Milo didn't sleep. He stayed up researching dissociative fugue states, musical hallucinations, memory reconsolidation. None of it explained this. Not really. There were cases, rare, horrifying ones, where children disappeared for days and came back speaking languages they never learned, humming songs they couldn't have heard. But never this. Never with teeth. At 3:12 a.m., the door to the crawl space opened by itself. He heard it from down the hall. When he got there, flashlight in hand, he found Grace inside, crouched low, eyes wide and vacant. She was counting. 4, 8, 12, 16. Grace, he said. She looked up, blinking rapidly. Confused. Frightened. I didn't come in here, she said. I just opened my eyes and I was already inside. She held something out to him. It was a scrap of paper, yellowed and stiff. A hand-drawn map. A rough sketch of the house, their house, but with one difference. A room that didn't exist. A square added behind the piano wall, labeled in shaky pencil. Dissonant room. Milo stared at it. He felt his skin go cold. Where did you get this? He asked. It was in my pocket. The next morning, they tore down the wall behind the piano. What they found shouldn't have been there. It was a room, exactly where the map said. No windows, no door, a sealed space between the walls. Inside, an antique metronome, ticking even though it wasn't wound. Stacks of music paper. A chair. A child's drawing taped to the far wall, crude figures, drawn in red crayon. One tall, one small, one with no face. In the center of the floor, etched into the wood, was a message, scrawled in jagged letters. Play it through. The ticking never stopped. Even after Milo removed the metronome from the hidden room and took out its winding mechanism, it kept ticking. Slow, deliberate, like a heartbeat counting down to something. Grace stared at it from across the living room. She hadn't spoken since they'd uncovered the dissonant room. She hadn't eaten either. Just sat on the couch, arms locked around her knees, eyes fixed on the piano. That night, the melody returned. But now it was longer, clearer. It wasn't random anymore. It had structure, an eerie, descending waltz. Each note plucked from some forgotten corner of Grace's mind. Milo recorded everything, sending clips to an old colleague at Berkeley, a composer with a reputation for decoding obscure musical patterns. He only texted back 2 words. It's instructional. Grace played it for the first time on Wednesday. She didn't mean to. Her hands moved on their own. It started slow, the first few notes of the waltz, and then built into something darker. Her expression changed mid-phrase. Blank. Mechanical. Like the music was pouring through her, not from her. Milo watched, horrified, as she played the full piece, all 3 minutes and 17 seconds, without missing a note. When she finished, she blinked, looked down at her hands, then screamed. There was blood on the keys. Fresh. Sticky. She checked her fingers. No cuts. But when Milo opened the lid of the piano, there was a tooth stuck between the hammers again, this one still wet. He took it into the kitchen, hands shaking. Bagged it like the others. Grace followed him, quiet. I don't think I'm Grace, she said softly. Not all the time. He turned. Don't say that. I mean it. Sometimes I watch myself do things. Open doors. Move things around the house. Leave notes I don't remember writing. And now, I'm playing music I never learned. Milo sat down. You're experiencing dissociation. Severe dissociation. This could be trauma-induced. She cut him off. Milo, I think I left part of myself behind. He stared at her. When I vanished, she whispered. When I was 11. I think something stayed there. And now, it wants to come back. He didn't respond. Not at first. Because in the hallway, behind Grace, the crawlspace door was open again. And on the floor beneath it, lined up neatly in a row, were 7 teeth. All from different people. All impossibly clean. Grace turned slowly. Saw them. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Instead, from the dissonant room, the metronome began to tick faster. Tick, 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 tick. The air changed. The walls began to vibrate, humming with that same awful melody. Milo stepped in front of her. We need to leave, he said. Grace didn't move. Grace, he said again, louder. Now. She turned to him, but something in her eyes had changed. She smiled and whispered, It's too late. Milo didn't remember falling asleep. One moment he was in the kitchen, rechecking the map, trying to find another room, another passage, anything. The next, he was waking up on the living room floor, the taste of rust thick in his mouth. His phone was gone. The house was dark. Too dark. He stood slowly, head pounding, ears ringing. The metronome had stopped ticking. That's when he noticed the piano lid was shut. Grace was gone. Grace, he called out. No answer. He moved cautiously through the house, calling her name again and again, until he reached the crawl space. It was open, of course, but something was different now. Inside, the air was warm, thick, breathing. He dropped to his knees and crawled inside, flashlight shaking in his hand. The walls were pulsing slightly, not with light, but with sound, faint, low vibrations, like something just below hearing. As he moved deeper, he saw the teeth again, now arranged in a circle, surrounding the metronome, which had somehow returned to its place in the middle of the room. There was something new too. A photograph, faded and torn, taped to the underside of the crawlspace ceiling. It showed a boy, maybe 10 years old, with sunken eyes and a cracked smile. Milo's stomach turned. He recognized that smile. It was his. The date on the back read, July 19th, 1999. The week Grace disappeared. His hands trembled as he pulled the photo free. Behind it, scribbled in charcoal, was a single phrase. He stayed so she could leave. The temperature dropped. Behind him, something shifted. He spun around. Grace was standing at the entrance of the crawl space, but her face was wrong, slack, blank, her eyes glassy and unfocused. She opened her mouth, and another voice came out. Deep. Male. Echoing with layers. She wasn't supposed to return. Milo scrambled backward. Who are you? The thing inside Grace smiled. The wrong one. The one who waited. The one who remembered. She stepped inside, the metronome ticking again with every footfall. Tick. 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 You left him here, the voice said. You locked him behind the music. Milo's voice cracked. We didn't know. We were kids. The thing crouched beside the circle of teeth. All memories rot when buried too deep. But music, it trailed a finger along the edge of the piano sheet music lining the walls. Music preserves. It tilted its head. Would you like to see what she saw? Before he could move, Grace lunged forward and pressed her hands to his temples. Darkness. Then music. A flood of dissonant notes, fractured images, the basement of a different house, no windows, walls of piano keys that wouldn't stop playing, even when the girl screamed. The sound a lullaby and a prison all at once. And in the corner, a boy. Silent. Watching. Watching her leave. Watching her forget. Milo fell backward, gasping, the vision gone. Grace collapsed beside him, twitching. Eyes fluttering. When she opened them, she looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time in hours. "Milo," she whispered. "He's still in there." He helped her sit up, and they both turned to the crawl space, where a child's voice was now singing the waltz, note for note, perfectly in tune. The child's voice sang from the walls for 13 minutes. Neither of them moved. The melody had changed, slower now, almost tender. It no longer sounded like a warning. It sounded like a memory trying not to vanish. When it stopped, the house fell into a silence so thick it pressed against their skin. Grace turned to Milo. Her face was wet with tears she didn't remember crying. "I remember the room now," she said softly. "But I don't think it was real. I mean, it was real to me. I was in there. But it was like a stage someone built inside my head. In the music, it taught me how to come back." Milo swallowed. "Grace, what if the music was never meant for you?" She looked at him. "What do you mean? What if it was meant to keep him in?" They stared at each other. And suddenly it all clicked. The metronome. The repetitive phrasing. The compulsion to play. It wasn't a haunting. It was a ritual. A containment sequence. Each time Grace played the piece, she was reinforcing the barrier. But over the years, as she forgot, as she let the piano sit untouched, as she stopped listening, the melody faded. The structure weakened. The boy, the other consciousness trapped inside, had found his way back in. And now he wanted out. "We have to finish it," she whispered. "The whole piece. Not the fragments I've been playing. The complete score." Milo hesitated. What if finishing it releases him instead? Grace shook her head. No, the opposite. He wants me to stall. He keeps stopping me with the notes. The teeth. The visions. Because if I remember how it ends, I'll send him back. She stood, trembling, walked to the piano, and pulled out the original sheet music, the ones found wrapped around the bundle of teeth. Pages missing. Stained. But enough remained. She sat down and began to play. Milo stood behind her, barely breathing. The house responded. With each chord, the temperature dropped. The lights flickered. The walls flexed as though the entire structure were inhaling and exhaling with her tempo. She didn't stop, even when her hands bled, even when her vision blurred. She reached the final page, the last 8 bars. And then, everything stopped. The house froze in place. No creaking, no wind, no ticking. Just stillness. Grace let her hands fall and smiled, weakly. "It's done," she said. Then, from the crawl space, came the sound of clapping. Slow, mocking, and a voice, young, amused, and far too close. "Wrong ending, Gracie." A figure stepped from the shadows beneath the staircase. It looked like a boy. Same age as the photo. Same hollow eyes. But his skin was gray and stretched too tight over bones. His mouth was cut unnaturally wide, the teeth too straight, too white. And his voice was hers, twisted into a child's pitch. "You finished his song," the thing grinned. "Not mine." Behind him, the crawl space door slammed shut. From inside, the metronome started ticking again. But now it was speeding up, uncontrollably. Tick, 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 tick. Grace stumbled backward. Milo reached for her, and the boy lunged. The impact knocked Grace sideways into the piano bench, her shoulder dislocating with a sickening pop. She screamed, but it wasn't pain that echoed in the house. It was music. The boy's touch corrupted everything it passed. Wood warped, light bulbs burst, paint peeled from the walls in long, bleeding strips. His grin stayed fixed, split too wide, like someone wearing the idea of a child. Milo grabbed the fire poker from beside the hearth and swung, not to hurt, but to distract. It passed straight through the boy. A blur. A flicker. As if he were a projection being played on the air itself. "I'm not a ghost," the boy hissed. "I'm a recording." He turned to Grace. "You trapped me in a measure that never ends." She was sobbing now, one arm limp, the other scrabbling for the sheet music scattered across the floor. "Why?" she gasped. "Why me? What did I do?" The boy tilted his head. "You listened." The memory slammed back into her brain with the force of a car crash. Not a vision, a memory. The room. The first time she went missing. She wasn't kidnapped. She wasn't lost. She found a piano in the woods. No one else saw it. No one else heard it. But she played it. And with every note, she brought something through. The boy was never trapped. She was the anchor. Her music had opened the door. And her forgetting, her return to normal life, had only half closed it. Milo was dragging her now, trying to get to the front door. But the hallway stretched, rubber band long. The walls warped like heat mirages. The boy followed without walking, floating just behind. "Don't run," he sang. Finished the last bar. Then Grace remembered. The real ending. The part she never played. The final bar wasn't in the sheet music. It had been carved into the underside of the piano lid. She'd seen it once, years ago, and dismissed it as decoration. For notes. Inverted. A motif in reverse. She scrambled back to the piano, Milo shouting behind her. She raised her bloody hand and played it. The four-note phrase. The anti-melody. The boy screamed, not with pain, but fury. No, he howled. That's not how it ends. The house began to shake violently, as if the sound itself was undoing every moment since her first disappearance. Light burst from the cracks in the walls. The dissonant room howled like a dying animal. And then silence. The boy was gone. The metronome was still. The crawl space door hung open. Inside, nothing. Just dust and wood and darkness. Grace collapsed. Milo caught her. Outside, it was morning. They never spoke of the sheet music again. They burned it all in the backyard, watched the notes curl and vanish into ash. But sometimes, on quiet nights, when Grace sat alone by her piano, her fingers would twitch toward a forgotten key, and she would hear a single, sour note in her head. Waiting. Because some songs never really end. They just wait for someone to play them again.